He did not curse the darkness. He did not abandon the God who let the darkness come. He lost everything in a single afternoon. His wealth, his workers, his children. And still he fell to the ground and worshipped. This is not a story about suffering. This is a story about who God is when nothing makes sense. This is the story of Job. In the land of Uz, a region of ancient prosperity east of Canaan, there lived a man the entire ancient world knew by reputation. His name was Job, and the scripture opens with a staggering declaration. He was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and a very large household. The Bible calls him the greatest man among all the people of the East. Not the wealthiest, the greatest. Every morning, Job rose before sunrise to pray. He offered burnt offerings for each of his children, just in case in the middle of their feasting, one of them had sinned in their heart against God. This was not fear. This was faithfulness. This was a man who understood the holiness of God and took intercession seriously. But what Job could not see, what none of us can see, was the council happening in heaven. The sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and with them came the adversary, the one the Hebrews called Hasatan, the accuser. God asked him, "Where have you come from?" From roaming the earth, walking back and forth across it. And then, the most unexpected question in Scripture, God said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright. He fears God and shuns evil." The adversary had a response ready.
Does Job fear God for nothing? You have put a hedge around him. Take it away, and he will curse you to your face.
God said,
Everything he has is in your hands, but do not touch the man himself.
and the adversary left the presence of God. Job did not know any of this. He woke up the next morning, offered his prayers, and began another ordinary day. The disasters came in waves, each one arriving before the last messenger had finished speaking. First, a servant arrived breathless. The Sabaeans had raided the oxen and donkeys. All the servants were killed. He alone escaped. While he was still speaking, a second arrived. Fire fell from the sky. The sheep and the servants tending them were burned up. He alone escaped. While he was still speaking, a third. The Chaldeans raided the camels in 3 columns. All the servants guarding them were killed. He alone escaped. While he was still speaking, a fourth. A great wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house where Job's children were feasting. The house collapsed. All 10 children were dead. In a single afternoon, Job had gone from the greatest man in the East to a man with nothing. He stood up. He tore his robe. He shaved his head. He fell to the ground, and he worshipped.
The Lord gave. The Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
The scripture records, in all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. The adversary returned to the divine counsel, and God said again, "Have you considered my servant Job? He still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without reason."
Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his own life, strike his flesh and bones, and he will curse you.
God permitted a second trial. Job was struck with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. He sat in a pile of ashes, scraping his skin with a piece of broken pottery. His own wife could not watch.
Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die!
And Job said,
You speak as a foolish woman speaks. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?
in all this, Job did not sin in what he said. When three of Job's closest friends heard what had happened, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, they set out together to comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they barely recognized him. They tore their robes and threw dust into the air over their heads. They sat down on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, and no one said a word, because they saw how great his suffering was. For 7 days, that was enough. Presence without explanation, silence without theology. But then Eliphaz could not hold back. He began what would become one of the longest theological arguments in Scripture. His logic was simple and utterly wrong.
Who that was innocent ever perished? Those who plow evil and sow trouble reap it. Your children sinned, Job. You must have sinned too.
And Zophar was the most cutting of all. God has even forgotten some of your sin, Job. Believe me, you deserve far worse than this. And then Job stood up and pushed back with a ferocity that fills 35 chapters of Scripture. Job did not pretend his friends were right to spare their feelings. He called out their theology directly. You are miserable comforters. Will your long-winded speeches never end? But his sharpest words were not for his friends. They were for God.
Why did I not die at birth? Why did light ever come to a man whose way is hidden, whom God has hedged in? If I have sinned, tell me. But if not, why do you not pardon my offense? Why do you refuse to forgive?
I am innocent, but God has denied me justice. He has made me his target.
Job was not in rebellion against God. He was in pursuit of God. His lament was not the lament of a man who had stopped believing. It was the anguish of a man who could not stop. He refused the false comfort of easy answers. He refused his wife's invitation to give up. He demanded an audience with the Almighty himself. I know that my Redeemer lives, and that in the end he will stand on the earth. And after my spin has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. Job 19:25-26, one of the most stunning declarations of resurrection faith in all of the Old Testament, written by a man sitting on an ash heap. A young man named Elihu had been listening. He was angry with Job for justifying himself before God, and he was angry with the three friends for condemning Job without finding a better answer. Elihu's contribution is often overlooked, but it is significant. He reframes the entire conversation.
You have been wrong, Job, not because you sinned, but because you have questioned God's justice itself. God is greater than any man. He does not need to answer you. God speaks in one way and in two, though man does not perceive it. Through dreams, through pain, through the valley of suffering, he is teaching.
Elihu does not have the full answer, but he points toward the right question. Not why is God doing this, but what is God doing in this? Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm, not in a still small voice, not in a dream, out of a whirlwind. And the first thing God said was not a comfort, it was a challenge.
Who is this that obscures my plans with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you.
What follows is one of the most extraordinary passages in all of literature. God speaking across 4 chapters about the wonders of creation.
Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Who shut up the sea behind doors? Have you entered the storehouses of snow?
Can you bind the Pleiades? Do you send the lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you?
Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me, if you know all this.
God never directly answers Job's question, why are you suffering? Instead, he answers a deeper question, who am I? And what Job encounters in the whirlwind is not an explanation. It is a person, a living, wild, sovereign, magnificent God, far beyond the small theological boxes his friends had tried to fit him into. Job said,
I am unworthy. I put my hand over my mouth. I will not answer. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eyes have seen you.
Then God turned to Eliphaz and said something stunning.
Eliphaz, Bildad, Zophar, you have not spoken the truth about me, as my servant Job has.
The friends who had theology textbooks were wrong. The man who yelled at God, wept before God, and demanded God explain himself was right. God told the friends to go to Job, the man they had accused, and have him pray for them. And Job prayed for them. That sentence alone deserves a pause. The man who had lost everything, who had been accused by these very friends of hidden sin, prayed for them. And in that act of intercessory grace, his own restoration began. God restored Job's fortunes. God gave him twice as much as he had before. His brothers and sisters returned. His friends returned. They brought silver and gold rings. God blessed the second half of Job's life more than the first. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 donkeys, and 10 more children, 3 daughters described as the most beautiful in the land. Job lived 140 more years. He saw his children and grandchildren to the 4th generation. And then, full of days, he died. You may be watching this from your own ash heap. Maybe you have done everything right, and it fell apart anyway. Maybe you prayed, and the silence was deafening. Maybe someone told you this must be your fault. The book of Job was written to tell you, you are not alone in that ash heap, and the silence is not absence. Job's friends gave him answers. God gave him himself. Your suffering is not proof that God has forgotten you. It may be the very arena where God is about to reveal himself more clearly than you have ever seen him. The answer to Job's suffering was not an explanation. It was an encounter. And that encounter changed everything. If you are in the middle of the season you cannot explain, hold on. The whirlwind is not the end of the story. It is where God speaks. If this story is speaking to you, take a moment right now. Subscribe to Sacred Scrolls Animation so you never miss a story. Every week we bring another chapter of Scripture to life through cinematic animation. Hit that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, and it means everything to this channel.